I'm Gail from GG Evergreen Bonsai. This video is about a workshop that I attended, run by Kaz from Kaz Bonsai. Some people might know Kaz from Willowbob. And she ran a session for our club. Our club is Tees Valley Bonsai Society, and there was lucky 7 that managed to have one-to-one help with our trees. Now, we all brought evergreen trees, so the workshops that you're going to see and the one-to-one advice that Kaz gave us was on yews, junipers and pines. So she's very, very generous. She allowed me to record those conversations. I had to edit it in a particular way. It's either that or put a lot of bleeps on. I don't know, maybe it's something in the northeast, but we have a bit of a laugh and the language isn't always the best for video. So, you know, we'll see how it goes when I'm doing the editing. We'll see what I've got left. Probably got nothing left at the end of it, but really had a fun day and I learned absolutely loads. So thank you very much for Kaz, and please carry on watching. There's lots and lots of advice that you possibly don't know or you already know, which is great, but hopefully all of you will learn something new. So I'd like to say thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. That helps me on my bonsai journey. I hope you enjoy this video, and I'll see you at the end. Goodbye. And many of my subscribers know that I'm a member of the Tees Valley Bonsai Society. So we'll be doing the workshop over at our meeting place, which is over at Norton. So there are people who have varying degrees of bonsai expertise, and we're all very, very keen to learn new skills and learn how to style our mature trees, which is fabulous. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. So thank you, Jimmy, who's our chairman, for organising Kaz to come down and do this workshop. So what we're looking at here is how would we prepare these branches. So we've got a lot of old needles, a lot of foliage there. That is a darker green. So we've got the new foliage there, and then we've got the old foliage. So you could imagine if I was going to wire this, I would end up catching all of these needles, or most of them, in the wire. And obviously we need it to look like a mature tree, so you know we don't need this foliage on here, so it would need to be bare. So I'm going to remove all of the old needles on the branches, and then it actually allows me to actually see which branches I would like to keep and which ones I'm going to remove as well, because obviously we've got too many branches, it's too dense, so I need to remove that. I'm also looking at if we've got any buds or anything where we've got joints, which is your crotch joint, so we need to remove some of those. Well, we need to see if we're removing some of them. Any foliage that has developed over the trunk that I don't need, so I need to again just have a look at those and go through the tree. So this is going to take an awful long time, but it'll be worth it, ready for Sunday. So what I'm doing here is I'm removing these needles from the lignified wood. So that is the woody areas from last year's sort of growth. This will encourage back budding. So I've got to be careful that I'm not removing some of the little buds that, you know, I might want to keep. So we've got things like this, which I might want to actually keep those buds. I don't want to knock those off. I can make decisions later on. So I will go through the tree, go through, as I say, these woody areas here and remove those needles. So when I'm looking at this branch, this is starting to grow directly down. We don't want that one. It's just going to use a lot of energy on a branch that we don't want. So we'll remove that. So welcome back. This is the next day. It took me about an hour and a half to remove the needles from yesterday's branches. Today I'm going to wire these. I've done a little bit of pruning, not much. I've only taken a few ends off these branches here, and that's literally just so I can see what I'm doing. When we style it, obviously I'll be clipping a lot more off, so that will again encourage the back budding and to make the aesthetic a lot more pleasing. So as you see, it's still looking quite wild, so I'm going to prep it up by putting wire on these branches so that we can manipulate them into a nice style. So I'm going to get on with that. It's been raining during the night, so I brought this in. I'm going to put a lovely audiobook on and then just chill out and do some wiring. So let's get on with it. So when we're looking at wiring, you always do 2 branches. So when we look here, we have this initial branch here, which is the primary branch going into a secondary branch here. So I'm going to wire up from here along here, so this will be able to bend. And remember, we're not bending anything today, that will be done at the workshop. It's literally just doing the wiring today. I've got 3.5mm gauge, so I'm going to anchor it to this primary branch. Be very, very careful not to knock any buds. We're going at a 45-degree angle. Try and get it as consistent as you can. And we need to be very, very careful and mindful of any little branches so we don't catch them. It's not a race, it's about pacing yourself, taking your time. Looking at this one, it's got 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to take the centre one out. So when you're thinking about wiring 2 branches, what I'm going to do is, instead of doing these 2 branches, which if you wire them, what happens, it's a bit like a seesaw. So you don't really have like an anchor, so you're better off wiring this one and go up that branch there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that I'm trying to follow my wire as well. Try and reduce the amount of times that you would cross your wire over. This one here is going to go around again at 45 degrees.
Just starting with Steve's white pine here, right? Now, Steve's and Sam are and a few of you have done this as well, have wired up a lot of your trees before you brought them. And it's a great idea because a lot of you know how to wire and you know how to wire well. Now, if people didn't, fair enough, I'd talk to people and tell people how to wire, but you know how to wire. So I often say, what is the point in coming to a workshop and spending almost your entire day putting wire on when what you really want to learn is the styling process, right? So, without further ado, Steve's white pine is brilliantly put all the wire on. So what we're going to be doing is setting the branches in place. Great tree, but what I'm thinking about taking off rather a major branch. It looks a little symmetrical at the minute. I'm not looking at the trunk. The trunk's in formal upright. I'm looking at this here. Do you see what I mean? You've got a symmetrical triangle going on a little bit. So, I'm contemplating removing this branch here.
Right.
Gin it. Maybe gin it. Obviously, I know you have put wire on. It is a good wiring practice for you. So I can only apologise for you put wire on.
I'm sure you can jump the gun.
But we'll hover with it. We'll just leave it. I'll let you have a think because I don't want to force my ideas on anybody. It's not the done thing. You have to look at the tree in your garden. And if you like that symmetry, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start to style this branch here.
Yeah.
Right? And we'll just push all of this out of the way for now. Right? Lift that up so it belongs to that branch there. Right? And then I'll let you have a think over the day. We don't even have to do it today. I could still style the branch for you and leave it as it is, and then you can go home and think, oh, I'll have a think about it. And you know, like, it might be like a month's time you can be looking at and think, actually, I think I'll take that off. So it gives you the option.
Yeah.
I've put the idea in your head, you can have a think about it. Pretty good there, the width of it's really good. And then you filter yourself into the trunk. And you can see the taper in the trunk and the movement in the trunk is really good. From here, you've got that nice curve there. You see from here, the Nabari's not quite so good. It's a little bit bulbous there. And then after you've done the Nabari and the trunk, you then go off into your primary branches and you think, right, where are my primary branches? So from here, your primary branches are in a pretty good place. They're there, they're there, they're there, they're there. You've got your back branch. Now from here, you've got this one coming straight towards you, which is a bit off-putting. And also, if you were to pick this as the front, you haven't really got a decent back branch in the right vicinity. Okay, you could move some of this round and move it into there. But when the Nabari's better here, the taper and the movement in the trunk's better here, that branch there is shouting to be a back branch. Everything's there. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. And as I say, the apex is coming towards you. It should always have a slight lean towards you. Nothing too bent over like that, but just ever such a slight lean towards you. Place that happens is up here, around the apex. So one of the things we will be doing with this is spreading them apart, you know, so that they're not going to be hiding the trunk. Yeah. And if that branch is gone, and nearly said when that branch is gone. Did you notice me quite slip of the tongue there?
I think, yeah, I think everybody's of the opinion it needs to go, doesn't it?
Massive
Yeah.
when you take that
But
off.
Eh?
It will make the base look massive.
It will.
I think
yeah.
the question I would have on it then is what kind of a gin would you
I wouldn't have a gin.
leave on? Would it just be a short stubby gin or?
Yeah, you wouldn't want that.
I don't think you want anything too long and,
Yeah.
you know, because you've got some little short stubby gins
Yeah.
going up the tree. And I think you kind of need to follow the story of the tree,
Yeah.
really. I think it obviously needs to be a little bit longer, but I think if you were to cut it, if you were to decide to go for it...
Get the
and you
cutters
were to
out,
cut-
Sam.
Get the cutters out.
Yeah, go.
Right.
I didn't feel the pain.
You want to catch that?
Doing a countdown.
You sure about this?
Yes, yeah, go with it.
You'll be getting that on camera, Gail.
Oh,
That's it.
changed your mind.
It's gone.
already.
Wouldn't I do
Glue it back on.
Yeah, so when this branch is all styled up, right, that'll set the tone for the rest of the tree, right?
It's not going to miss that branch, is it? It's not going to miss that branch at all, is it?
Not one bit.
No.
So,
Looks better
And-
already.
and also, gins are quite good to use as
Angus.
to for guy wires. So, because we'll be pulling one or two of these branches down, that needs to come down to there. Let's just get rid of some of them stubs. Generally, it splits off into two. Now you've got two branches here very close to the trunk, but at present I feel like we need them, so don't panic. But what you generally do is your main branches you spread out, the thicker branches at the base of the foliage pad you spread out to make the very base of it. And any of the smaller branches or any of these ones that are coming sticking out from the top, just move them up out the way. They're what I call your fillers, right? That's what's going to add the volume into the foliage pad. So sometimes you just need to put a little bit of movement in some of these branches. Remember, if there's a bit of movement in the trunk, you've often got a bit of movement in the branches as well. Like pines, we do have to do what I call the spaghettification of some of these branches to pull things in, but that is never meant to be there permanently. That would always end up being pruned out over time. The only reason you have to do it is because you've got long branches with nothing on it and a bit of foliage on the end. So you have to snake it in to get your image, and then the correct pruning will end up getting backbudding, and then that'll fill in and you cut them off. So some slight little bit of this kind of putting a bit of back and forwards movement into some of these little bits here isn't really snaking as such. Snaking's that real kind of spaghettification type. So
How would you remove the old needles on it, Kath?
it depends.
Like looking at that tree now, would you take any more off?
I don't think so, because often with Scots pines, Mugo pines that are particularly strong, I will, and as long as it's been fed well and it's growing really, really well, I will take off all of previous needles and only leave the needles from this year. Sometimes if it's really strong, I'll pull off some of this year's needles as well. But that's after you've done any pruning,
Yeah.
right? You need to do your pruning of pines this time of the year, because pruning at this time of the year promotes backbudding on these areas. Candle pruning and candle pinching at the beginning of the year you'll only get back buds there, and people candle pinch on pines, bits of material far too early. They'll just, it's a piece of raw material and they're candle pinching. Let the tree grow, let it get really vigorous before you start candle pinching. What you would do in an instance like that, you would let the tree grow, feed it well over the growing season. Then the tree's needles have matured, they've hardened, they're not easily pulled out. So once they've matured, the tree is then deciding, right, I need to think for the future, I'm going to start producing buds for next year. So you catch it at that time and you come in and you prune. And what you would do, so say for the sake of argument, you've got this branch here, right? You would think, right, I want some back buds back here, right? Candle pinching is only going to get them there, right? And you obviously still have to do that with mature trees. So if I come along and think, right, the only way to get the back budding along here is to literally, with a pair of scissors, and I'm not going to do it with this, but you would cut it there. You would take that off there, because you've got that there. What you can't do, see, is you couldn't cut that off there and prune that one to that little bud, because that's not strong enough on its own. They need to have a good bit of vigour in them to be pruned back to. The sap has to be being pulled back and forwards. If there isn't enough green and a nice good bud on the end, it's not going to do that. It's going to say, oh, well, there's no point. I'm just going to abort it. So give it something to force the tree to pull sap back and forwards. But to get it to back bud, you would prune off that bit, keep that bit. Buds would grow along here. Eventually, when the buds that come in here get like them, like back there, then you would maybe take that off or prune it to there. And it's a slow process going back and back and back until you get to the stage where all your twigs are the same length all over the tree.
Looking to like cut them, knock them in half or anything like it.
No, I
the
think
full season.
if it's a piece of raw material, I wouldn't be entertaining the fact of doing candle pinching. I would let the tree grow, let it get vigorous, let it get happy, let it get the oomph within itself. And then at this time of the year, end of July, going into kind of August time, come in and cut off the areas that you don't want back to some good buds, or good sections with foliage. And then in a few months' time, you'll see buds developing along here. And then in the next year, when they've come out, made into needles, you can come in and take a bit more off.
Yeah.
And it just takes time, you know.
So when you're saying raw material, what are you doing about the candles then?
Well, a tree that has finished, if you like, or it's well on, yes, you candle prune then. Because you want lots of dense foliage in here, and obviously if you don't candle pinch, the tree just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But you still have to do a bit of that pruning as well. But it's not like such long bits. What was that? It's not like, you know how on the bit of raw material you've got like really long bits with a tuft of foliage on the end. Once you've got them way back and you've got lots of foliage here, then you'll start doing the candle pinching, because you kind of want more developing in there. I'm trying to hide the workings of the tree. What I call the workings of the tree is, if you've got your front here, remember the tree has to look good all the way around. So if you turn the tree round, you can see a lot of workings in there, right? So, right, Steve, because I need to get everyone cracking. You can see I've started to produce a foliage pad there. Can you see even how denser it's starting to look just by starting to form the foliage pad there, right? So what I want you to do is to carry on using the The thicker-
Yourself there, Cass, because carry on and means something totally different to us.
start to lay the thicker branches at the bottom, right? Any of these thinner ones that are further back, if you just push them up out the way for the minute, because they're going to be your fillers, right? So if you just start to lay the main ones out, so that you tip all of the foliage up to the light, because if the buds don't get to the light, they'll start to suffer, right? We want to get the trees as happy and as healthy and as strong as you possibly can. So get everything up to the light, right? And any needles pointing down off the bottom. I like nice flat bottoms and clean crotches. I'll be checking your crotches later on, a lot of you. Less pruned off just about everything that's coming off. You plucked all the needles off that needed to come off, did you?
Yeah, I've been waiting for. I've got the top still to do. But
Right.
I'll crack on with that there.
Right, so we are going to need to put some guys on this.
Yeah.
Obviously, this branch down here is going to need to be a bit longer because it's quite a bulk of a tree, right? So the branches have to be in proportion with the thickness and the height of the tree. So when these are pulled down, I feel like, and obviously the pot actually isn't bad for the tree, but the branches always need to come out the sides of the pot a little bit. Right, I think I've got
You've got a spider crawl on your
I
head.
felt something on before. I'm going, what the hell is that? If we can find the tie-in wire,
It'll be there somewhere.
It'll be there somewhere. And then, but get a bit of wire on, and if we can pull down these branches, they want to come down a bit. So if you maybe do that first.
Yeah.
So that you loosen the wood fibres a little bit, and then go on to carrying on plucking your needles off the top, right? And then we'll come back and we'll pull that down a bit more,
Right, okay.
right? Because just what happens if you just go along and you just york it down, you're going to bust something, right? But if you kind of rock stuff a little bit, and then set it into position with some guy wires. Same with that one, a little bit, just a little bit down there. And then we'll come back a little bit later on and do a little bit more, right? So...
And keeping all three of those branches there?
I think we will at the minute, right? I definitely think we will at the minute, because this one we kind of need for a little bit of kind of volume to the whole thing. That is going to kind of blend into it a little bit. How I would do a pine. You can see on there you've spread stuff out, you're tipping stuff up to the light to get the best you can. These I kind of do kind of flat layers, right? And then over time, as the buds develop, you get a nice dome volume of foliage in there with the McKirry technique done on it, a good bit of pruning, a good bit of feeding, spreading everything out to the light. So you can see there I'm actually just producing a bit of a flat foliage pad, but then I still use some of the little twigs that are sticking kind of up on the top of the pad. I will lift up and sit over the top, just add a little bit of volume, right? Put a little bit of back and forwards movement into them as well. Right, so... And then that wants to come down there. Right? So hopefully we'll get everything kind of sorted today.
So when they go on about pinching the foliage off, are you only pinching it off the old wood? You're not pinching off this year's growth?
No, only where it's lignified.
Yeah.
Don't take it off where the twig's green, because you can pull off too much kind of the bark and it'll dry out. Remember, you still have to leave a good amount of needles for the tree to photosynthesize and do its job. So, but the light and air needs to get to these lignified bits,
Right.
and that's going to produce loads of buds. Damage is the thing that makes trees back bud, particularly with pines. I've noticed it with all trees, but particularly with pines. They seem to obviously damage that can be pruning, bending, pinching, pulling needles off, all of that type of thing. They respond by, oh shit, I'm being eaten, I need to grow. A lot of trees are the same. So when you're pulling the needles off yews, everywhere you pull a needle off, there's like a little node, and there's a possibility of a bud developing from there. So you often see some fantastic yews out on the continent there, and they're absolutely solid. And I've seen people just sit a full bottle of wine in the top of the tree, and it doesn't do any damage to the tree because it's so flippin' dense. So we're going to get that type of effect. You see how a pad's starting to just form there, but we need bigger pads, because it's such a sizable tree and it's pretty tall. So we're going to pull that down and add that layer just above there, and obviously that one as well. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're going to start to form a foliage pad there. We'll pull some of this around, because you've got a big gap between here and here, right? So we need to kind of optically lift some of this up to make it look like there's a foliage pad in there, right? What I want you to do is carry on with your needle plucking, get it all nicely tidied up, and then start whopping some more wire on it,
Right, okay.
right?
Mhm.
You happy with that?
Yeah.